Well, hello and welcome once again to another episode of Spirit Walking with Spirit Walker. I'm your host, Spirit Walker, and today we're going to be walking all over Prattville and doing a little thing that I call the Saga of the Rutabaga. Let's walk. Okay, so it all started right here at Rutabaga County High School. This was our high school. And it all started in one of those classrooms right there, right in the front of the building. It was in one of those classrooms that I had a drama class with my best friend, Larry Owens. Larry, who has since passed away, now has the theater in the current Prattville High School is named the Larry Owens Theater, because he grew up to become a English and drama teacher at the high school. This was where we started, Saga County High School. But Larry and I were best friends, and we used to entertain the class all the time with different projects that we had to do in drama class. Especially our specialty was imitating Cheech and Chong. We imitated Cheech and Chong for all type of skits that we had to come up with doing improv. So the teacher would say, do a skit about a conversation between two people. Larry and I would team up, and we would do Cheech and Chong routines. Since she never heard of Cheech and Chong at the time, they didn't know, but the class knew. And they'd say after class, they'd say, "Hey, good thing Mrs. Newby doesn't listen to Cheech and Chong." But I'd come in and I'd say something like, "Hey man, what you doing?" And he'd say, and Larry would say, "Oh, I'm watching a cowboy and Indian movie, man." And I'd say, "Oh man, that's not a cowboy and Indian movie. That's a test pattern." Now you young people don't know what that means, but that was funny back in the 70s. Larry and I we had to come up with a story. So I wrote the story, and then Larry and I punched it up, and it was called the Saga of the Rutabaga. So we decided to go buy 3 rutabagas from the grocery store. We went to the store, and back then we didn't have videotape or film of any kind like that. We had 8mm, but we had to take pictures, illustrate the story, and then tell the story in class. So I had a Instamatic camera that shot out the film, and I took all the pictures, and we enacted this whole thing. So it began in a grocery store with us going in and finding the rutabagas, and we just took pictures of the rutabagas. And then the story progressed from here all over Prattville. Okay, so the story began with the rutabaga being born in an open field. Once the rutabaga was born in an open field, it was harvested and then taken to a grocery store. I think we used a Piggly Wiggly grocery store. Downtown Prattville is now closed. We had John Brown, a good friend. We solicited his help because Larry and I didn't want to be the only ones in the video. In fact, we weren't planning on being in the video at all. We wanted John Brown to do the whole thing, but as it evolved, it ended up with John and Larry both being in the video. I keep saying video. It was not a video. It would have been if we did it today. But at the time, as I said, it was a Polaroid picture. So, John Brown goes in. I get a picture of him picking the rutabaga out of a produce bin and taking the rutabaga home. And he befriends the rutabaga. And then we went from there. So I stood right here in the middle of the street on these 2 yellow lines and took pictures of John Brown walking down the street with the rutabaga, befriending the rutabaga. So John Brown walked up and down these streets with the rutabaga in his hand, talking to the rutabaga as if it was his best friend. People passing by, cars driving by, me standing in the middle of the road taking pictures. It was hilarious, but he was talking to the rutabaga. At one time he set it down and pretended to be walking along with the rutabaga. It was right about here. I think this was the pool hall. It was in this pool hall that John Brown took the rutabaga inside and started playing a game of pool. And that's where he met Father Brown, who was Larry Owens, my best friend. It was in this pool hall that they befriended him, and they became fast friends of the Rutabaga. We're up here on Pratt Hill, Gin Shop Hill also as it's known, and this is where Daniel Pratt and his family, the founder of Prattville, is buried. It was this spot that we shot two crucial scenes. First one being the death of the Rutabaga, because the Rutabaga had to die. Now, Larry Owens and John Brown were both friends with the Rutabaga, and they went all over the place with the Rutabaga. And we filmed different places with them downtown, just walking around and talking. And then we came up here to show a scene that we came up with. Larry Owens played Father Brown, not to be confused with John Brown, in his priestly garb. He borrowed a choir robe from his Lutheran church, and he looked very priestly. He became Father Brown, and they befriended the Rutabaga, and they went rock climbing with the Rutabaga. And we filmed the death scene where the Rutabaga accidentally falls to its death from the top of Pratt Hill, which is right over here. So John and Larry brought the Rutabaga to the precipice of the hill here, overlooking all of Prattville, and from Pratt's grave, which is right behind us. They came over here, and we decided to film the death scene. Now in this scene, Larry and John are climbing with the Rutabaga, and the Rutabaga slips, loses its grip, and falls to its death off the cliff. To get the shot, I stood at the bottom of the hill shooting up, and they then released the Rutabaga as if they were trying to grab for the Rutabaga, but in reality tossing it or dropping it over the edge of the cliff as it fell to its death. You can see how steep the cliff is. It looked even better when the kudzu and all the briars weren't there. But this is where it fell to its death, and I would have been standing down in the road. So while Larry Owens and John Brown were at the top of the hill releasing the Rutabaga, which was about to fall to its death, and keep in mind that back then all this kudzu and stuff wasn't here. This was a pretty clear hill, and you could see the Rutabaga fall. When they released the Rutabaga, it bounced. And the first time I took the picture, it bounced out of frame. And so the Rutabaga rolled all the way to the bottom of the hill. And it rolled all the way across the hill, across the road, to the other side, where that fence is. And the Rutabaga took a lot of damage. I then tried to throw the Rutabaga back up to Larry and John, unsuccessfully, and it bounced down the hill again. By that time it was pretty beat up. So I go to the car and I get another Rutabaga, the stand-in Rutabaga, and I toss it up the hill. They catch it. This time they released the Rutabaga down the hill, and I got a good picture of it. The problem was that the Rutabaga bounced into the road, and a car coming down the road ran over the Rutabaga and smashed the Rutabaga. Rutabaga number 2 down. We have one left, but luckily we just filmed the death of the Rutabaga. So the second scene that was shot here at Pratt Cemetery was the burial of the Rutabaga. And for this scene, Larry Owens played trumpet in the high school band. So we took his trumpet case, and that became the coffin for the Rutabaga. Whether or not the Rutabaga was actually in the coffin, I cannot confirm or verify or deny, but he carried the trumpet case. So he carried the trumpet case on his shoulder. I take that back. John Brown carried the trumpet case on his shoulder, and Larry walked very, very humbly in front of him as the priest conducting the funeral. And they walked down this road right here to Pratt Cemetery, where we buried the Rutabaga. Not actually, but that's where the picture showed. And so the final picture of the burial was Larry and John with the trumpet case, supposedly carrying the Rutabaga to its grave, where we entered the gate into Pratt Cemetery and pretended to bury the Rutabaga. Of course, we didn't really. We would never desecrate a grave, but that was the plan. Took the pictures of the death of the Rutabaga, of the burial. And so now we had to film the very last portion of our saga of the Rutabaga. We had the birth of the Rutabaga, we had the death of the Rutabaga, we had the burial of the Rutabaga. Now we had to resurrect the Rutabaga, or show life after death for the Rutabaga. And we had John Brown, who had been John Brown throughout the entire episode, But in this scene, we needed the devil and God to be fighting over the soul of the Rutabaga. And so Larry got a red choir robe, not a red choir robe, a red graduation robe. You see, we were about to graduate high school and our colors were red and white. So he got a hold of one of the robes for graduation. John Brown put it on and represented the devil. And of course, Larry Owens, in his priestly garb, represented God. And we had them standing here fighting over the Rutabaga. And that was the end. And it was the resurrection of the Rutabaga. We never knew. We left it a cliffhanger. You never knew who won the battle for the soul of the Rutabaga. And now I'll show you what happened to the actual 2 Rutabagas that did not get destroyed in the filming. I shouldn't say filming, in the picture taking. And so back then, Rutabaga Creek was a little bit deeper than it is now. We took the 2 remaining Rutabagas and we buried them at sea right here in Rutabaga Creek. And that was the end of the saga of the Rutabaga. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our little walk through a portion of my life that I really enjoyed. It was maybe the first time that my creative juices really started flowing, thanks to my partner and my long-missed friend, Larry Owens. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it brought back some memories of some different places around town for you. And just do me a favor and hit that like button on Facebook, the thumbs up button, and also subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you subscribe, because that's how you encourage me to continue to make more videos. And I want to branch out. I want to branch out to other areas. Right now we're in this quarantine and I have to kind of stay localized, but trust me, there will be more coming. And watch for my new channel, Spirit Talking, that'll be coming up fairly soon. Hey, thanks for joining me. It's been a blast. You gotta love it. And as always, I'm Spirit Walker, and I approve of this message.